means judging the people. Now, this is extremely important for what we're going to study in our lecture today. The name of the seventh church is Laodicea. It is a compound word in Greek which means judging the people. In other words, the seventh church is the period of the judgment of the church, which means that the church of Philadelphia must come immediately before the judgment. Are you following what I'm saying? If the seventh church is judging the people, that must mean that the church of Philadelphia, the previous church, exists immediately before the church which is judged, or the church whose name means judging the people. Now let's turn in our Bibles to the book of Revelation, chapter 3 and verse 7, where we find the message to the church of Philadelphia. Revelation chapter 3 and verse 7. And we're going to do a preliminary reading of this passage, and we're going to stop after reading each one of the verses, and I'm going to make some remarks or comments as we go along. Revelation chapter 3 and verse 7. It says this, "And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, These things says he who is holy, he who is true, he who has the key of David." Now the question is, who has the key of David? Well, actually, if you read the messages to the churches, the one who has the key of David is Jesus. And so it says, he who has the key of David. Now, you notice a mention of a key. Now, what does that key open? We're not told in verse 7 yet. Notice what it continues saying. He who opens and no one shuts, and shuts and no one opens. You'll notice that the key is going to open something. And it's going to open one thing and it's going to shut another. And nobody can open what has been shut, and no one can shut what has been opened. Now, we have the mention of the key and opening and closing, but we're not told exactly what the key opens. But now let's go to verse 8. Verse 8. It says here, "I know your works. See, I have set before you a" what? An open door. Oh, now we know what the key opens. The key opens a what? The key opens a door, according to this. So we know that a door is opened with the key. But the question is, to where does that door lead once the door is opened? That is not directly addressed here in Revelation chapter 3 and verse 8, but we're going to come to it later. So a door is opened with the key, but we're not told where that door leads to. Obviously, it leads into a building someplace. Now, notice once again, "I know your works," verse 8. I have set before you an open door, and no one can" what? "Can shut it. For you have a little strength, have kept my word, and have not denied my name." And then in verse 9, we have a very interesting expression. It says there, once again, it's still speaking in the context of the church of Philadelphia, "Indeed, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan." Now we need to ask the question, what is the synagogue of Satan? We'll just ask the questions and we'll answer those questions later. But it says, "Indeed, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan," and now notice, "who say they are Jews and are not." What does that mean? A counterfeit Jew. Well, we'll leave that question open for now too. "Indeed, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not, but lie. Indeed, I will make them come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you." And so, reviewing what we have in the context of the church of Philadelphia, you have the key of David. The key of David opens a door. We're not told what is inside that door, but it opens a door. And when the door is opened, you have in the same context a mention of the synagogue of Satan, those who say that they are Jews and are not Jews. Now we're going to decipher all of this language in a few moments. In fact, let's speak first of all about the key of David. In order to understand the key of David in Revelation chapter 3, we must go back to the Old Testament source. This expression comes from Isaiah chapter 22 and verses 22 and 23. This is a messianic prophecy. It's a prophecy about something that the Messiah is going to do in the future from Isaiah's day. It says there in Isaiah chapter 22 and verses 22 and 23, and there's some details here that are not found in Revelation 3. It says, the key of the house of David. Who came from the house of David? Kings, right? And the key of the house of David, now notice this, I will lay on his shoulder. That is of critical importance. Where is the key? The key that opens the door, the key of David, it's on the Messiah's what? Shoulder, according to this. And now notice, so he, and by the way, this is Jesus, it's a messianic prophecy, so he shall open and no one shall shut. And he, once again, the Messiah, shall shut and no one shall open. I will fasten him as a peg in a secure place. And he will become, now notice what the Messiah is going to become. The Messiah will become a what? A glorious throne to his Father's house. Let me ask you, do you have the idea of kingship in this verse? You most certainly do. You have a reference to the house of David. You have a reference to a glorious throne. In other words, the idea is the idea of kingship. And the key is going to be where? The key is going to be upon the shoulder. The key of David that opens the door is on the Messiah's shoulder. Now go with me to Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6. Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6. We find a very interesting reference here also to the shoulder. It says there in Isaiah 9:6, and then we'll read verse 7 because it has some very important points. And by the way, there's probably no one here who has never read this verse. It's a messianic prophecy referring to Jesus Christ. We're told here, for unto us a child is born. Unto us a son is given. And now notice this. And the government will be upon his shoulder. What does it mean to have the key on the shoulder? It means to have what? The government. So what does the key do? The key opens the door which allows him to get his what? His government. Remember the idea of kingship that we found in Isaiah 22 verses 22 and 23? Now let's continue reading. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder. And his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So do you see the relationship between the key, the shoulder, and having the government? In other words, ruling. Now notice verse 7. Here is where it becomes even more interesting because there's another idea that comes in. It says here, speaking about the same individual, his government will increase. He will sit upon the what? The throne of David. What does the key allow him to do? It opens the door for him to do what? To sit upon what? To sit upon the throne of David to do what? To rule. Notice. It says once again, of the increase of his government and peace, there will be no end. Upon the throne of David, obviously as king, and over his what? Over his kingdom, to order it, now notice this, to order it and establish it with what?